start the recording at any time.
Okay. So webinar is on sustaining pressure ulcer prevention practices at your hospital and is based on the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality tool for preventing pressure ulcers in hospitals. I would like to everyone and thank you for joining this webinar about how to sustain pressure ulcer prevention practices at your hospital. To background about myself, I am Dan Berlowitz. I have a clinical background in geriatrics. I've done extensive research on looking at the quality of pressure ulcer care. I'm describing in a short while a little bit of this research that really relates to sustaining pressure ulcer prevention, and was integrally involved in developing the AHRQ toolkit on pressure ulcer prevention. I do have an extensive history of working with pressure ulcers. I'm past president of the National Pressure Ulcer Advisory Panel, and certainly I've advised healthcare organizations on pressure ulcer prevention practices. We will be talking about a number of things related to sustaining practices in pressure ulcer prevention. First, we'll just briefly have the purpose challenges of sustaining pressure ulcer prevention practices. I then go into a case study from the Department of Veterans Affairs. We will talk about who will sustain these practices, as well as support needed to sustain these practices. Certainly, we'll also be talking about the critical role of measurement in sustaining best practices, mainly about other ways to sustain your improvement program. And take a note of your questions. Quality improvement specialists will follow up with you after this webinar to address those questions. So you will soon be implementing a pressure ulcer program at your hospital. I am certain that you will all be wildly successful in that program and that you will see large improvements in your pressure ulcer rates. So you will know that you have successfully implemented this program when you've had at least 3 to 6 months of consistently improved performance. And by improved performance, it's not just doing the right thing, but hopefully that your rates will have declined considerably. So I used to say, gee, we've improved care, we can relax. But the reality is that there's still, your work may not be over. And part of what you have to do is to ensure that your new practices continue over the long term. You need to take steps to sustain the improvements that you have made. And part of it is the challenges of sustaining practices. And lots of things can threaten all your improvements. In particular, once the novelty of the change has worn off, people often tend to go back to their old approaches. They feel comfortable with what they used to do and just have a natural tendency to resume those old practices because it's awfully easy. The challenges, resources may no longer be available that are right for the improvement efforts. Practice may become harder to perform, and a critical threat may be that staff leave and replaced by others who do things differently. So you need to be very aware of how you will sustain practices in where there's a turnover of key staff. And some of the challenges that you need to be aware of. Now, talking about sustaining pressure ulcer care, I want to go to a case study from work that we did, and this was some of the earliest work that I did with pressure ulcers. ulcers. And, in this day and age, we are so used to doing measurement and providing feedback to facilities. This was not always the case. And back in the early 1990s, the VA decided, gee, we'd be doing system-wide quality measurement. And the measure that they selected for their first system-wide measure was looking at pressure ulcer rates in nursing homes. A number of reasons they did that. One, the data was available from a database which was similar to the now minimum data set used in nursing homes. But more than being the data available, interested in an area that was important and an area that was not controversial. So what VA did was decide to measure pressure ulcer rates in over 100 nursing homes within the VA, and every 6 months send a report to these nursing homes in terms of how they were doing. And nursing homes that were not doing very well got very polite letters from the actual office saying, "You have a problem with your pressure ulcer rates, let us help you." And suddenly when hospital directors got these messages from central office, they were not very happy about that. So basically, nursing homes and hospitals devoted tremendous resources to ulcer quality improvement, and really only show in town. There are no huge competing interests for improvement. So what happened? This here shows change in the risk-adjusted rates of pressure ulcer development at the VA in the early 1990s. And see is that rate declined by about 30% over the 2 to 3 years of the program. Really a huge success by focusing on pressure ulcer rates and providing audit and feedback so that nursing homes learn about their performance will improve. I mean, this is not quite the end of the story. So in the 1990s, something happened in the VA, and basically they decided to become much more focused on quality measurement and to stress system-wide performance measures. And they were stressing things such as performance of preventive health measures, such as are people getting colon cancer screening, are women receiving breast cancer screening and pap smears, is hypertension and diabetes being controlled. These were being reported regularly to hospital directors. Even the salaries of these hospital directors or the bonuses to their performance on these quality measures. Now, interestingly, among all the performance measures that were looked at, they did not include pressure ulcer measurements rates in nursing homes. As shown in this slide, the rate of pressure ulcer development went right back up. And look at the middle late 1990s, it was exactly the same rates as seen in the early 1990s. And if not only were the rates unchanged, if you look at the percent of pressure ulcers that were severe in terms of being stage 3 or 4, we saw that in later time periods, there were pressure ulcers that were stage 3 and 4. So not only did the rates sustained, but the percent of ulcers that were severe was the same or even slightly worse. So what we in this case study was that the improvements were not sustained. And it's hard to see why that happened. When they started the program, it was the only quality measure around. And efforts and resources of the quality management and improvement offices were spent on this measure. Once it got distracted by having to focus on other measures, the improvements could not be sustained because the best practices were not really institutionalized. They had been routinized into the daily activities of the staff. And when oversight and effort was no longer there, people went back to what they felt comfortable with. So that's a challenge that you all will be confronted with once you have shown your improvements. How do we continue that? So the lesson learned here is that changes can only be sustained with a focused effort on that. An example was from nursing homes. I think this is also true from hospitals. And certainly there's a wealth of other experience to suggest that experience in nursing homes would be the same for hospitals. So then is, after you have achieved your success, your implementation team has done its work, who sustain these best practices. And there are two potential choices that for organizations will make a lot of sense. One is the unit champions, and the other is a dedicated sustainability team. And we'll be talking about each of these options. In terms of unit champions, certainly as part of your improvement effort, the kit strongly emphasizes the need to create unit champions who serve staff members who serve as pressure ulcer prevention resources on each unit. Now, these people should be key not just as an improvement effort, but also to sustaining pressure prevention practices. One of the things that really emphasized in the toolkit and is critically important for the sustaining practices is want to try to have multiple unit champions. That way, if one leaves, institutional memory will remain. Another advantage of that is that you may have different champions on different shifts. But certainly, you want to multiple unit champions so that they will help sustain your improvements. The unit champions will have a number of things to think about. To think about is how to keep unit champions engaged and replace unit champions as needed when they have natural transitions to other positions or even to other hospitals. Now, the unit champions may also want to create a sustainability team. And we use the term sustainability team here, but it's something else and give it some other designation. The important point is to have a designated group that will be responsible for certain activities that will sustain your improvements. Some of these activities may include things such as disseminating new information about pressure ulcer prevention to staff. And this includes staff bulletin, posters, flyers, staff education fairs, or types of information dissemination activities that you can think about. And the to differentiate here from the unit champions is that the sustainability team is not on a single unit like unit champions are. Rather, this reflects a hospital-wide approach to sustainability and disseminating information. The team may also hold meetings to discuss outcomes and update materials and policies. They will be responsible for keeping staff enthusiastic about their changes that have been made. They also will want to work with the quality office to make sure that data collection and reporting are fully integrated into routine work processes. As we'll talk about more, measurement is important not just for improving care, but for sustaining the improvements. Other things the sustainability team may do is to review literature to identify new best practices and think about how those will be integrated into your new workflow, and also taking up any new challenges that arise. So certainly, what we envision is a sustainability team that will be extremely active in its activities. Sustainability team members come from? Well, that's really your choice. It really makes sense that two members represent unit champions from some of the different units in the improvement effort, but there are areas that people come from, and what is done, the implementation team should clearly assign roles to the new owners and all facts about the project to new owners. And that, again, there will be good continuity in the processes that have been developed. So the sustainability team needs support to work, and there are things that do, but there are also things that are needed from hospital leadership. In doing improvement effort, it emphasizes the important role that hospital leadership has, and the support of hospital leadership is critical for the improvement effort. It's true for the sustainability effort. Without hospital leadership, sustained best practices may be extremely difficult. What should the sustainability team do? They should make sure that unit staff continue to appreciate the need for pressure ulcer prevention. That they have to unit staff have to recognize that what they're doing is important. They need that unit staff realize that pressure ulcer prevention is ongoing, that the hospital and hospital leadership continue to believe that this is an important endeavor. And you need to make sure that unit staff understand the role in pressure ulcer prevention and how it relates to other staff members. Pressure ulcer prevention does not rely on individuals, it takes a team. So what the sustainability team can do, provide feedback on the effectiveness of pressure ulcer prevention strategies and to celebrate successes. The sustainability team can provide training and or retraining, and as part of providing feedback, it is so important to track performance routinely. The sustainability team can do is to design systems and prompts to ensure that care is carried out appropriately. While this may have happened during the implementation effort, new systems and prompts may need to be developed and implemented. The facility team should be working closely with unit champions and ensure that there are a sufficient number of unit champions. As much sustainability team will want to integrate pressure ulcer prevention practices into existing organizational structures and routines. They will be responsible for monitoring pressure ulcer rates and pressure ulcer prevention practices. Hopefully, they were reporting to hospitals' oversight committees to leadership so that it remains a focus of the key bodies. And the sustainability team may need to help facilitate getting needs its supplies and equipment that's so critical to maintaining pressure ulcer best practices. So leadership also needs to be involved, as was mentioned, and things they need to do is, one, just make sure that they demonstrate a presence and that pressure ulcer prevention is important to them. They need to ensure that funds for needed supplies, equipment, training, and retraining are available. They certainly will want to keep abreast of pressure ulcer prevention efforts and everything that's being done to sustain the efforts. Hopefully, will be very proactive in filling staff vacancies as they arise, and they support different types of data collection, and depending upon what system you have in place, it may help develop new approaches to data collection and using electronic methods. Now that the toolkit really emphasizes is the central role of measuring pressure ulcer rates, prevention practices, in improvement. And one of the things that is commonly considered in improvement work is if you measure it, you can't improve it. Well, it really applies to sustainability. It's not measuring what you're doing. There is no way you can know whether or not you're sustaining best practices. So slides, we will be just emphasizing aspects about measurement. There is a separate webinar that focuses on measurement, but it is so critical, I wanted to re-emphasize it. So some things we'll be talking about is, I guess, the purpose of measurement, examples of process measures, examples of outcome measures, talking briefly about how to measure, and then how to assess the data. So, we have mentioned before, and hopefully other webinar, the purpose of measurement and is to allow you practice to do a number of tasks. First, you will track progress in pressure ulcer rates over time. Are you sustaining improvements? To getting better, and hopefully you're doing what happened in the VA, that these improvements cannot be sustained. You want to examine process measures and change practices, and determine whether or not pressure ulcer rates are where they should be. This will allow you to keep your program on track, and importantly, in getting the support of leadership, allow you to demonstrate the success of your program to hospital leadership. So, emphasized previously, when you measure pressure ulcer care, there are two things that you can focus on. The first is looking at process measures. And process measures and a question, are we doing the things that will lead to improvements in outcomes? And examples of process measures may include things such as the percentage of patients at risk for pressure ulcers with specific interventions in place, such as a turn and repositioning schedule, nutritional interventions, heel protectors, so it can be measured. Another example might be the percentage of patients with a pressure ulcer risk assessment completed within 8 hours of admission. An example of a process measure may be percentage of care plans addressing all identified risk factors. These are examples of process measures, and you want to select ones that make most sense for your organization and what your improvement effort emphasized. process measures, you can also look at outcome measures, which represent the end results of care. Typically, when people outcome measures, they may look at pressure ulcer incidence rates, which are the percent of pressure ulcers developing. One can look at pressure ulcer prevalence rates, which is the percentage of people have a pressure ulcer at any given time. There are other types that can be used, including the facility-acquired rate, which looks at the prevalent pressure ulcers that developed in your hospital. The thing to emphasize is be consistent in what you do over time. Whatever measure you select, be consistent in using that. That will facilitate what is called internal benchmarking, covering your performance over time. To measurement, there are lots of things that need to be decided. You may then work with your quality department in deciding these questions. You'll want to decide who measure pressure ulcer rates. You want to know who will measure ulcer prevention practices, who will receive the data, what will be done with the data, how these data will be disseminated to the units and hospital leadership. And to accomplish this, you set up a routine workflow for data collection. The question is how you will use the data to assess how you're doing. So you will decide what changes in data represent a real success or concern for your hospital. And very important is that this data, make sure that it reflects true changes in quality rather than temporary fluctuations in rates that may happen. And these temporary fluctuations will particularly common in looking at only, if you're working at a relatively small hospital, only looking at 1 or 2 units, relatively few patients. But we'll need to decide what changes in the rates represent a real difference over time. So a critical aspect of sustained best practices is reinforcing desired results. In the patient phase, we stress the importance of this, and this continues in the sustainability phase. You will want to celebrate successes and have other ways to sustain your program. Some things you can do to celebrate successes include recognizing the success of your pressure ulcer prevention program to generate and maintain excitement about change effort. You can be small, but they should be regular. Examples may be gift certificates, parties, plaques, but keep on acknowledging the success that the units or individuals have had, and do that by having regular rewards that will keep these the people keep focused on pressure ulcer prevention and remind them that this is still something that's important to hospital leadership. So at level, certainly find small successes early on. It applies to the implementation effort, but continues in the sustainability effort, where unit staff, the first time they complete a required form correctly, certainly keep raising the bar over time. You could have been rewarding staff for no facility-acquired pressure ulcer rates over a 3-month period. You can also generate competition within the hospital, for example, rewarding units with the greatest decrease in pressure ulcer incidence. Important in all amendments and improvements is disseminating information and certainly should post results for each unit and for the hospital overall. Make sure people know how they are doing. Individual level, encourage and reward staff members who seek extra education on pressure ulcer prevention. You may recognize one staff member each quarter for success in preventing pressure ulcers. If you do that, certainly spread the wealth and choose staff from a variety of different disciplines. Now, there are ways to sustain your program. Certainly, as emphasized, work with your hospital's quality management and improvement team to coordinate sustainability with other QI programs. So, sustain best practices is not unique to pressure ulcers. Other improvement efforts that your hospital will be involved in will also be interested in how to sustain it. It's about how your sustainability team interacts with these other hospital efforts, and the sustainability team may be responsible for several areas. To address staff turnover. To be trained in your pressure ulcer prevention practices, the new staff will need to be integrated into the unit's pressure ulcer prevention program, and that what has been learned through the improvement effort is not forgotten as staff leave. It is often worthwhile to have meetings to address causes of pressure ulcers. The hospital pressure ulcer committee coaches, managers, and clinical staff should all attend. I will emphasize this before, continue to re-emphasize, celebrate success, and measure pressure ulcer rates and prevention practices. You're doing feedback to clinicians on how they are doing in their pressure ulcer prevention practices. So, we have talked about sustaining pressure ulcer practices. We talked about the purpose and challenge of sustaining pressure ulcer prevention practices. We described a case study from the VA which really illustrates the difficulties in doing the system. We talk about who will sustain these practices, the needed to sustain these practices, central role of measuring pressure ulcer rates and prevention practices in the sustainability effort, and other ways to sustain your program. Sustaining pressure improvements requires creativity and thought, just like the improvement effort did. I would like to thank you for being such great listeners to this presentation. Certainly, if you have any questions, you should refer them to your quality improvement specialists who are working with you, and emphasize the Pressure Ulcer Toolkit as a resource to help you in your sustainability efforts. So thank you again, and good luck with your efforts to sustain improvement pressure ulcer care. Thank you.